Namaskar. Dear viewers, today we are celebrating World Environment Day. It is June 5th. To celebrate and to discuss various facets of World Environment Day about environmental protection and sustainability, we have with us in our studio Professor P.K. Joshi, who is the chairperson of Special Center for Disaster Research, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Dear viewers, we know that this World Environment Day, it is celebrated since 1973, and it is perhaps the look at the global outreach. If it is having a global platform, largest platform, wherein the environmental protection, sustainability, and every aspects have been discussed, and in a way that the awareness to sensitize the people, this has been used as a platform. And also it advocates the various principles of sustainability. And we know that this World Environment Day is very, very important. Since 1973, if you see, a lot of issues have been discussed. And in this particular Environmental Day this year, the theme is Beat Plastic Pollution. So, sir, welcome to our studio, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir, sir, in your opinion, how the issue of environment is important as regards today's World Environment Day?
Well, if you look at environment and the status of environment globally, what we get to understand it is degrading over the periods, and we have actually come to a level wherein coming back is something very challenging. And in addition to global environmental change, we get to understand because of air pollution and other kind of stuff, there are challenges of climate change, sustainability, which need to be addressed in the sense that we imagine for something sustainable world wherein everybody has a equal opportunity to live and to enjoy the benefits of the environment. So the degree of degradation which we are seeing, whether it is in air, whether it is in land or water, we are understanding that we have gone out of something which is called as safe operating space, and coming back to safe operating space is very challenging task. So this becomes a global worry, and it is equally worrisome for the nations which are along the tropics, and developing countries have similar kind of challenges as well.
Interesting, sir. Because this particular World Environment Day, in fact, we are advocating the people to practice the sustainability principles, eco-friendly practices also, and how well their simple steps can help us to, save the environment and also make our planet greener. So, when you look at the challenges, you said rightly that the issue of climate change and environmental degradation is a very important thing. And do you think that, in your opinion, there is the environmental crisis? If you look at it, it's different from the world global level. At India context, it is different.
Well, the way I understand environmental challenges, I see it as a much more of a global challenge, global issue. But definitely countries which are developing countries and which are actually venturing into being developed countries, for instance, the kind of steps India is taking forward too. So it has its own degree of aspirations. But when it comes to global commitments, so there we definitely see, there are some sectoral variations which are between north and south, which are between developed and developing countries. So definitely, countries like India and other set of developing countries, they do have their own set of challenges, aspirations, but also commitments as well. So when you try balancing between aspirations, commitments, so there is definitely a altogether different order of understanding and thinking when we are comparing it with the developed countries.
So the prioritizing the issues, if you look at the global level, will be different compared to a developing country like India.
Yeah, if you follow the international negotiations which were there, if you see the example of Glasgow, wherein they were trying to ban fossil fuel. So our Minister of Environment, he very strongly came forward and he said, no, you can phase out it gradually. You can't just zero down to saying from today it will be banned, because a whole set of developing countries, they still have to go a long path in sense of providing basic amenities and services to its citizenship. Though developed countries have already achieved it, and what they have achieved it is at the cost of environment, which has become global, problem today. So therein we need to balance out the way we argue related to environmental crisis or environmental challenges when developed vis-a-vis developing countries are being talked.
So the disparity, there is a lot of disparity in socioeconomic conditions also. Even the economic development is required for the developing country. It's understandable, sir. So what are the current global crisis, environmental crisis?
Well, everybody talks about climate change, and climate change is the most dominating and dictating factor which is of global environmental conditions. Reason one, because it is directly challenging the life forms. It is directly challenging the existence of life forms on the planet. But in addition to that, what we are understanding and what recently IPCC has also talked about, it says that most of the hazards which are there, which are getting converted to disasters, their frequency and intensity is going to increase by virtue of changes in temperature and precipitation regimes, which is very alarming. And when you look at these disasters, they affect the poorest across the world. In addition to this, when we look at conditions of rivers, when we look at condition of air, so there is huge amount of pollution which is there, which is unaccounted at times, and which we honestly don't know how to, at least for many of the countries, they don't know how to repurify that. Then soil degradation is taking place, forest degradation is another condition altogether. Ecological habitats are getting more fragmented. So these all together, people generally call them as global environmental change, or these all are linked to climate change. So these are some of the very hot topics which people should look at.
Okay, sir. So, with regard to the agriculture production system, what kind of environmental impact the production system is facing?
Well, there is something called as intensification of agriculture fields. When it comes to intensification, you wish to get more production out of same amount of land or soil. For that, either you are using hybrid varieties, and these hybrid varieties are too intensive in terms of water demand, in terms of fertilizers. So that is challenging the groundwater. We get to understand in most parts of the world, groundwater is getting depleted. And when you are adding lot of fertilizers onto that, if it is beyond the requirement of soil or the crop, it is going as a runoff, and it is adding to pollution to rivers and oceans. So that is, and over the period what we are understanding, there is a degree of desertification of land.
Yes,
In India specifically, if you look at some parts of Haryana, some parts of Punjab, they have already started talking about this. So desertification is taking place, you have pollution, and you have groundwater which is getting depleted.
Okay, sir. So the issue of climate change, environmental degradation, soil degradation, forest degradation, and the agriculture-induced changes that is happening, these are all the current environmental crisis. That's
Yes.
in your opinion.
Yes, these are. But as we are discussing on the World Environment Day, and when there is a hashtag which is talking about how to stop plastic
pollution. Yeah.
So plastic pollution has again become a nuance which in society, and it is very surprising to see this. It was somewhere invented in 1907,
Yeah.
and research continued on plastic, and somewhere in 1963 or 67, Nobel Prize was given for plastic,
Yes,
and now it has become a headache.
Yeah.
And though people talk about microplastic, but there is a component of nanoplastic, and there is larger plastic debris which is being talked about. So these all are getting into our ecological chains.
Yeah.
So which is again, we don't know the exact solution except refusing it or reusing it.
Yeah, when you look at the timeline, because in 1950s it is almost 1 million metric tons, but in this year, in 2018, if you look at it, 275 million metric tons. Look at the quantity. It has so much has increased, and plastic.
Yes, definitely, and it is going exponentially high.
Yeah.
And what people are assuming by 2030, it will get another 40% of addition. Somewhere you will have values 400 plus million metric tons. And much more surprising is a major part of this, it goes to oceans, it goes to ocean beds, it goes to water bodies. It is choking all environmental flows which should be there.
So how this plastic is affecting the human beings? In what kind of impact you visualize? Sir?
Well, let us understand that when plastic is getting into oceans, aquatic systems and all, so fishes and other kind of aquatic life forms, they are consuming it, and then subsequently the research tells us it is getting up to tissue level.
Okay.
So there are some of the waterfalls which have been experimented on, and it has been seen that up to tissue level we have seen microplastic. Then there is a concept of food chain and biological magnification.
Magnification.
The concentration which is entering into this will magnify, and end of the day it has to come onto the plate.
Yeah.
And it is getting consumed by human societies. So you have one pathway through this food chain, it will get into that. In addition to this, what we are seeing, the kind of usage which is in our day-to-day life, plus the food which is getting from agriculture fields and all. There are some components of plastics which are getting ingested. So there are reports which are telling us, in not only in different life forms but also in human beings, there are impacts of plastic ingestion which are there.
Basically, it is carcinogenic also, isn't it, sir?
Yes, it is definitely, and the kind of, reports which are coming around, which are very specifically talking about cancer, cancer kind of diseases. So therein, people are linking it to microplastic and the kind of interventions which are there because of that. So it is adding to overall, challenging and degrading the human health or human well-being when we say in the environmental perspective.
The problem as far as with plastic is concerned, the physical properties, it is making the plastic, it cannot be recycled. So that is adding to the problem, the menace, that's a crux of the plastic pollution, sir. So what kind of steps that can be taken at the global level to minimize the use of plastics?
See, for quite good time, people have talked about reusing it, and people have also talked about bringing some kind of regulations onto this, which is definitely good when you are looking at any democratic system. But in addition to that, it is very high time that one, we say no to plastic.
Okay.
Second, when you are refusing it, you will have to think very loudly so that you can bring out some alternate. Why people are not able to refuse it? Because there is no alternate which is available. It appears to be very handy. So to rethink so that we can bring some kind of alternate options so that plastic could be replaced. And if as a scientific community, as a social system or a governance system, if we think very strongly towards refusing it and rethinking on alternatives, probably we'll be able to escape the kind of usage which is around, and then we will be able to minimize it. As you rightly said, it is the one which can't be naturally degraded. So it remains there in soil and water for much longer period than any imagination for products. So we have to break that chain by refusing it.
So the first point is that we have to somehow reduce the use of single-use plastics, and the second thing is that we'll try to go for best management practices so that the quantum, the waste plastic material that is available in the environment, that can be minimized. And the third important point from your discussion, what I got it is that we should look for some alternative products which can be used by the common man, so that our dependency on plastic will be reduced. That's absolutely right. In this regard, the use of bioplastics is very significant, isn't it, sir?
Yes, people have started talking about that. But I always take these things with a word of caution till we don't know what will be the impact. So though it is bioplastic, but we need to understand the entire life cycle.
Life cycle, yeah.
So
true.
if we know the end of that, then probably we can say it is relatively secure or it is secure. So I think people are still talking about it. Though a suffix of bio has been used, so it appears to be it is safer, but scientific community has to relook into that and look into the entire life cycle of that. Life cycle analysis need to
Life cycle analysis is important, sir. And equally important point is nowadays it's coming up is that whoever is producing the plastics, so they should be taking the responsibility. So when they produce the plastics, they should take care of that, whether after consumption by the consumers, that those plastics should be taken back and it should be recycled. So kind of a sub management, producer management, extended support system should be given for the plastics, that something is happening in current parlance.
Well, definitely it is one arm of solid waste management. So the first step could be where it is being generated, you are able to segregate it, and if you are able to segregate it successfully, then you are pulling it back from the environmental system. So that option is very good, and we should definitely work towards that. But at the same time, we need to understand what you are collecting back, what shall you be using it for,
Okay.
where it could be used. People are talking about in construction of roads, in
Yes,
construction of
yeah,
some building materials. There are some of the examples which are over there, but we need to understand what degree of success is there, and if it is sustainable in a proper implementation mode. If it is there, then definitely such type of practices could be applauded, and those should be taken forward. But given the chemical composition and the way plastic interacts, it appears to be very not that encouraging, at least to me.
It's basically a polymeric substance.
Polymeric
substance, yeah. Sir, in this, in fact, we have to take all the steps possible to reduce the plastic pollution. In this regard, how the universities, the education institutions can take any steps? What kind of steps they can take?
The power of maintaining environment or to actually achieving the goals of sustainable development, youth has to play a very crucial
important role, yeah.
And now everybody has realized this, So one, we need to bring in some kind of, formal education inputs towards this, which already government of India is doing. Now you have environmental sciences all, and the moment one enters the university, even in primary education, there is a specific course on environmental sciences. But in addition to formal education, you need to bring in some curricular activities, some kind of skill development, wherein, students are sensitive towards this and they do a proactive participation in this. So I see World Environment Day as a wonderful event wherein you are able to bring masses together, you are able to encourage them, motivate them, and develop some kind of campaigns wherein people take the ownership and people participate onto this. So I believe across the country and across the world, most of the educational institutes and even other set of organizations, they observe World Environment Day. They organize events so that awareness could be increased. They also organize some set of exercises which can motivate and
them.
which can help student to adapt it. So those events we get to see, people come with numbers that we have carried out this much of activity, these many people have been trained. So that way, the generation which has to be take the flag forward, they are getting appropriate
Path
inputs.
forward. That's true, sir. So that is with respect to the universities and educational institutions. So from the point of view of individuals, what kind of steps they can take to beat plastic pollution?
One is, as I said earlier, refusing it, taking a very strong commitment. If you can refuse it, if you can make some kind of alternates by yourself, and the way, the simplest example people talk about, the way we carry our mobiles. Why can't we carry, bags which are cloth or cotton bags? So this is one of the simplest step. Probably everybody should be able to take it. In addition to this, expanding your comfort level and then going beyond that, and then also encouraging your peers, your friend circle, and assisting or helping them in refusing plastic. And that could be other way. And the final thing is, even if you have some kind of binding and because of some reasons you are still you are using plastic, how do you bring a culture of reutilization, reusage of this? So if these these are very small steps, I believe, and everybody with a very common sense should be able to make them as their habit. If these things come in habit, probably we'll be able to add to checking plastic pollution.
Yeah. So from educational institutions we have discussed, individual level we have discussed. What will be the role of organizations, corporates? What kind of steps they can take to beat plastic pollution, sir?
Well, to me, corporates and organizations, and especially business houses, they are the trendsetters. The way activities are being done, they can impress larger masses. And if they also bring in this in their component of working, there is something called as corporate social responsibility, there is something called as environmental compliance, there is something called as reporting sustainability in business. Through those, if they can introduce how to minimize such type of pollutions, how to minimize usage of such kind of items which are adding to the environmental degradation, so they can be a good agent of change. They should be able to bring such type of changes to masses. Plus, the companies which are directly or indirectly using such type of items, and they should take much bolder step, that saying no to such items in their day-to-day activities, in their marketing strategies, in their product development, and also entire life cycle of the product which they are developing or they are engaged with. So they should be able to set the trend. They should be able to develop a practice which will definitely get down onto the common masses.
So the individuals, the organizations, the corporate, the government also is having an important role to play, sir. So from your point of view, what, as far as Indian government is concerned, what kind of steps they can take to reduce the plastic pollution?
Well, first, I will take this opportunity to applaud our Prime Minister, from Lal Killa, when for the first time he talked about Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. That was something leaders should do. That is what a government is expected to do, and he has set a path through that. So in the similar fashion, if from the leadership, top leadership and leaders across all the sectors, if they set examples that they are able to say no to plastic, or they are able to encourage a culture or a system wherein plastic is or any kind of pollutant is not being used, so that will definitely motivate entire spectrum of citizenship. Plus, they should also, if as we all understand, there are some of the laws, legislative instruments which are in place. So we need to see how those are enforced, how those are being applied. So governance has a very high degree of responsibility towards that. Ensuring the legislative instruments, they are actually working onto the ground and using them appropriately, so that it is just not the message, but also the control segment is being taken care of. And the last one which I could imagine is, when they are basically participating with masses for any of the event or any of the activity, right from election to announcing newer programs and all, they should also always try bringing in a component of sustainable development.
Excellent.
How in their programs, in their plans, in their objectives, they are talking about sustainability, better planet. So again, for that matter, we should complement the present government, which is taking care of these components in a very lively manner, and that is actually getting across the citizenship. So at least India should be proud of this, that governance is pro-environment and it is looking towards sustainable development goals.
Excellent, sir. So what will be your message for this day, World Environment Day, to our viewers, sir?
Well, viewers should be passionate about environment, because it is not something which you have received from your ancestors. It is something which you have borrowed from your forthcoming generation. The entire concept of sustainable development, that you don't compromise with the the benefits with your forthcoming generation should get. So taking that into account, let us be more responsible, be more proactive, and take a kind of coming out of comfort levels to set an example as a practice. And if it becomes part of your habit, we'll get to understand that avoiding any such type of thing which is basically degrading environment is not difficult to adapt, and that is very convenient.
Excellent, sir. Dear viewers, today we discussed various aspects of plastic pollution. In fact, today is the World Environment Day. The main aim or the theme of World Environment Day is beat plastic pollution. In fact, if you look at the dimension, the quantity of the plastic pollutants in the environment, it has increased tremendously. If you look at the 1950s, it was only 1 million metric tons. In last decade, it was 275 million metric tons. The quantity has increased a lot. And this quantum has to be managed by the plastic. If you look at it, the plastic pollution, it has to be managed by adopting scientific principles. When you look at the scientific principles, first is rational use of plastics and avoiding single use of plastics. Second is to look for some alternative sustainable products like bioplastics also. At the same time, the law should be enforced. When I say law should be enforced in a way that rational utilization of plastics, and if you look at it, wherever possible, through the educational media, educational institutions, universities, we'll be trying to bring in a change in the among the people, how they think, how they use plastics, because definitely the change has to come from the individual at home, at household level. So then only we can think about at the country level, at the global level, what kind of changes we can bring in. So our guest today, Professor P.K. Joshi sir, has talked about in detail the dimensions at the individual level, what kind of changes is required to beat plastic pollution. At the level of university or educational institutions, what kind of education programs that can be developed to mitigate plastic pollution, and at instantly at the organization level or corporate environment, because they also have a vital role to play in terms of their corporate social responsibility, because they need to, whatever the profit they have earned, they need to plow back by providing welfare to the society for their, our well-being also. The health of the environment also, health of the human beings also is equally important thing. So today we have discussed every aspect of plastic pollution. Thank you very much, sir, for coming to our studio and for giving us wonderful facets of plastic pollution. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
पहाड़ों पर जाना किसे पसंद नहीं। इस तरह के पहाड़ तो आपने देखे ही होंगे। चलिए आज आपको विशेष प्रकार के पहाड़ों की सैर कराते हैं। ये हैं कूड़े के पहाड़, जिनके बोझ तले दुनिया दबी जा रही है। इन कूड़े के पहाड़ों में हैं हमारे घरों, कार्यालयों, उद्योगों से निकलने वाली बेकार की वस्तुएं, जैसे इस्तेमाल किया हुआ कागज, फटे कपड़े, पुरानी लकड़ी, धातु, कांच के सामान, सब्जी फलों के छिलके, पुराने मोबाइल, लैपटॉप इत्यादि। कूड़े के ये पहाड़ न केवल शहरों में बल्कि गांव में भी पाए जाते हैं। अपशिष्ट की बढ़ती हुई मात्रा और इसकी विषैली प्रकृति हमारे पर्यावरण और स्वास्थ्य को नुकसान पहुंचाती है। कभी सोचा है इसका निपटान कैसे होता है, या क्या होता है इन कूड़े के पहाड़ों का? कैसे हम इस समस्या से छुटकारा पा सकते हैं? इन सभी प्रश्नों का उत्तर देने के लिए इंदिरा गांधी राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विश्वविद्यालय अपशिष्ट प्रबंधन में प्रमाण पत्र कार्यक्रम प्रस्तुत करता है। यदि आप नगर निगम में कार्यरत हैं, सैनिटरी इंस्पेक्टर हैं, अपशिष्ट प्रबंधक हैं या अपशिष्ट से जुड़ी हुई परामर्श सेवाएं, अनुसंधान या विकास कार्य करते हैं, तो ये कार्यक्रम आपके लिए सर्वोत्तम है। कार्यक्रम की न्यूनतम योग्यता है 12वीं उत्तीर्ण और इसे 6 महीने में पूरा किया जा सकता है, या अधिक से अधिक आप इसे 2 साल के अंतराल पर भी पूरा कर सकते हैं। कार्यक्रम में शामिल है स्व शिक्षण पाठ्यक्रम सामग्री, ऑडियो वीडियो संसाधन और विभिन्न माध्यमों से शिक्षण की सुविधा। तो फिर देर किस बात की, चलिए समस्या का नहीं समाधान का हिस्सा बने। अपशिष्ट प्रबंधन में प्रमाण पत्र कार्यक्रम में दाखिला लें। हम आपके स्वागत के लिए आतुर हैं। अधिक जानकारी के लिए देखें www.ignou.ac.in। धन्यवाद।
Namaskar, dear viewers. Today, as part of World Environment Day celebrations, we'll be discussing about Mission Life, lifestyle for environment. To discuss the features of Mission Life, we have with us Professor P.K. Joshi, chairperson of Special Center for Disaster Research, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Welcome to our studio, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dear viewers, we know this Mission Life, in fact, it was announced by our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi uh, during 2021 COP26 Glasgow Summit. It's a very important event indeed. When you look at this Mission Life, it is somewhere, gets back to the, nature, some kind of synchronous thing we'll be having with the nature. In fact, that's the most important, the crux of Mission Life. This lifestyle for environment, now it has been turned into a global mass movement wherein people will be nudged to take up the eco-friendly, environmental friendly practices, so that those practices will help us to bring in a change in our attitude towards the environment, and also it will be helping us to save the environment, protect the environment. And this Mission Life is a very important what do you call that, hallmark of our environmental movement, if you look at it that way. And this Mission Life, if you look at it, there are many aspects are there. The themes, if you look at it, there are 7 important themes which talks about saving the environment, saving the water, energy, and bringing in a change in the lifestyle of healthy lifestyle indeed, and how best we can reduce the waste, whether it is a municipal solid waste or electronic waste. And also it talks about sustainable food systems. So these are the 7 important themes that is very much part of the Mission Life program. As I said, it's a global mass movement, and there are a lot of steps that has to be taken in Mission Life. So, sir, in your opinion, how this Mission Life, in what way that can be taken forward uh, to the students, and even the education, through the educational institutions, it has to reach the people. So in what all the paths that can be adopted?
Before actually answering this question, let us understand why it was proposed and what was the need of life mission. If you look all the negotiations which were around climate change, everybody was talking about adaptation, mitigation, and then there were commitments. There were commitments from the developed world that these many $billion will be given, which was never met. So therein, when people actually looked into how to check or how to actually slow down the rate of climate change or rise in temperature, so individual commitment came into picture, that what individuals can do, because all these big negotiation houses which are called as COP, there was nothing very concrete coming as an action item on the ground. So herein the Prime Minister of the country, Shri Narendra Modi ji, he very emphatically and very categorically mentioned about life mission. He said if we actually want to contribute something to reduce climate change or to reduce the rate of rise in temperature, we will have to relook into our lifestyles. Because when you compare, the kind of contributions which are over there, so it is a lifestyle of West which is highly energy intensive, which is highly energy demanding. When you compare it to the entire East, including Asian countries. So it was that was basically contributing to this. So herein this was seen as a window. And when he proposed it at Glasgow, people were like, everybody was thinking about this, but nobody had guts or courage to put it on a platform like COP. And then UNESCO worked on a white paper, and many of the other international institutes. The Director General of United Nations was in Gujarat, India, where it was made as a global mission. And now we are seeing everybody is talking about this. Now, coming to your question, if you actually want to see that life mission takes an action item, or it actually happens at the global level. So, the school-going kids, youth, should be encouraged towards this.
Okay.
And they should made a part of this so that it becomes a part of their lifestyles. It is ultimately the lifestyle which is impacting the environmental degradation or climate change. So we need to bring it in, it could be done through curricula, which is generally thought to be as one of the activities educational or training institutes are doing. But more than that, it has to become a part of their culture. So if you want to bring it as a part of their culture, we need to ensure somewhere the activities are done in that manner. It becomes their routine in terms of saving energy. Like lot of times what we get to understand is energy is being wasted. So how do you bring it back as a culture? So that has to bring as a changes in the habitual or habit related patterns. So if one becomes habitual about conserving water, conserving energy, so it automatically becomes a lifestyle. That is what entire mission is. So educational institutes have to identify curricular activities wherein those things could be brought in, bringing in some kind of events, and then subsequently making it as a norm of the institute or that school, that building, wherein people follow those norms. If these kind of things could be done in a gradual and stepwise manner, it will automatically become part of our behavior. And that is the entire mission is about, behavioral changes that we need to bring in, so that the 7 important points which you have listed, those could be taken care of.
So in fact, this particular mission started, besides the climate mitigation and adaptation, climate finance, what kind of lifestyle changes can be brought in so that we can achieve the Paris goals?
Yes.
That is a point actually. And in fact, it's indeed an important contribution of India towards the climate negotiation itself.
Definitely. Globally, people were talking about 2 degrees Celsius, 1.5 degrees Celsius. Even after doing everything, we have yet not, we are sure if we are able to actually minimize it. And we have crossed 1.5 degrees Celsius. So therein it was seen that it is a responsibility of each and every individual to participate and to actively participate towards this. And that is how this mission can contribute. And I believe the way it has been conceptualized, the way it has been seen, it will definitely bring some changes.
When you look at the carbon footprint also, the Westerners, they are very energy intensive and they use a lot of energy. And in terms of carbon footprint, it's almost the carbon 1.8 metric tons. It's very, very less from our side. Definitely. So that is the point actually. That is also the Prime Minister has mentioned this particular point. And for this to be successful, this particular mission should be a global mass movement. That's what he was trying to talk about it. So in that way, he was talking about the 7 themes actually. The first and foremost important thing, as you rightly said, about the climate change, because this is discussed in the backdrop of climate change, the energy use. So that's what he was trying to talk about it, that we have to try to minimize the use of fossil fuels, save energy, all other things he has discussed about it. In your view, and you rightly talked about, we need to phase out the fossil fuels, we need to go for energy transition. Somehow we need to take up the renewable energy also, use of renewable energy and kind of things. So what all the contribution of India in this regard, in energy transition, when I talk about it? Because many ways India is a front runner as far as the International Solar Alliance is concerned, green hydrogen is concerned, renewable energy sector is also concerned. We are front runners. So what are the other steps that can be taken from the perspective of India, sir?
Well, the first and foremost thing is India made a huge commitment when renewable energy is talked about. The best part of that commitment is it has actually walked the talk. It has proved that such kind of things could be done. Solar Alliance is a wonderful example wherein he talked about one sun, one planet, so that we need one system of generating this. Then second thing is very effectively and on the grounds, green hydrogen was being talked about. Green hydrogen is typically wherein you are not using fossil fuels for generating hydrogen by splitting water. So that component is there. And now we get to see most of the research units, they are researching on this. In addition to that, even corporate has come forward. We have example from Reliance, wherein Tatas, they have invested on this. So one of the biggest challenge when such type of renewable energy is talked about is the place where it is being generated and the place where it has to be used. Many a times geographically they are apart. So transportation cost is very high. or storage cost is very high. So in solar panels, we have seen that, it was very, costly business altogether. So people were not much encouraged. But in addition to providing subsidies, government also invested on lowering down the cost of solar panels. In the same manner, when you are talking about green hydrogen, you will have to experiment and research it in a manner that you reduce the cost of production of green hydrogen. One. Second is storage capacity should be economical, and at the same time transporting it and using it appropriately, that has to be reduced. So I see there are many of the plans when it comes to transportation sector, when it comes to energy sector, wherein government has tried designing entire concepts so that it can efficiently being utilized. So these are some of the steps which country is taking forward, and these are more of action items which are there for country. If we are able to do this, we can set an example. When for quite good time Germany was spearheading in renewable energy and specifically in solar. But now we see there is a shift. It has come to India, and India has taken the responsibility along with many of the small island and other set of countries. So these are wonderful steps which are getting realized.
Recently, we have launched the green hydrogen mission also. It has given the path, what all the steps has to be taken to increase the green hydrogen production, because that's totally different from the grey hydrogen. That's the point actually, because the production of hydrogen from the renewable energy. That's use.
So Western world was always talking about hydrogen and hydrogen as a main fuel. But when you try categorizing what that hydrogen is, so it is grey, brown. It means there is a high degree of dependency on fossil
fuels.
You are just transforming it and calling it a cleaner fuel, but it is not. So country has very strongly put forward green hydrogen as a concept, talking about that the entire source of splitting of water will be not dependent on fossil fuels. So you are transforming it, but you are taking it from solar, you are taking it from other renewable sources, so that the true definition of clean energy and that could be met. So it is a huge mission.
We have very categorically we stated that it should be green hydrogen. So as far as the renewable energy sector is concerned, solar energy, green hydrogen, and even we are thinking about the nuclear energy also, because it's very much it's not non-polluting, and hydropower also. So these are all four things we are focusing on as far as achieving our goals, renewable energy goals. So with regard to the energy use in transportation, what are the steps Government of India has taken, sir?
Well, this is very clear through research activities and all, the kind of energy demands which are there for across globe, but most, importantly, developing countries like India, and where population is very large. So one form of energy will not solve our purposes. We need to have a mosaic of energy, wherein, as you listed, four different types. So country has tried looking at, and it is now very strongly talking about when it comes to railway, though we are talking about Vande Bharat, and which is a truth today, and you have nearly 50 trains which are there on the track. So in transport sector, government is very strongly looking at how green hydrogen could be used. Same way when it comes to industries and all, how can we transition from fuel to this kind of clean energy? So then when you talk about vehicles which are there on the road, so now you have a different code which is talking about Bharat and a new Bharat. So it is talking about electric vehicles. It is also ensuring, if you follow the minister, Gadkari ji, so he talks about that my roads will be very efficient. So moving from one place to another place, it will be very efficient. It will be saving time, it will be saving energy
also.
So what you are doing, you are shifting footprint from aeroplanes kind of stuff onto road, so cost will be reduced. And at the same time, the kind of infrastructure which is being developed, it is ensuring that the mass transit system could be enveloped. Then metro is another investment, fast metro within cities and intercities kind of concept is coming. So all together in different spheres of transport sector, renewable energy is being talked about, it is being implemented, and it is being used. So from cars to fast moving trains, we see there is some kind of initiatives and action oriented.
So with regard to energy sector, we are taking a lot of steps. So, with respect to the, we have discussed about climate change, because climate change also can have a drastic effect on the water, water sector. So, what are the steps that has to be taken to ensure water security?
Well, water is again, it is like it follows the law of conservation. What it will be doing is it will be changing its, phase,
Forms.
forms. It will get polluted. It is getting more into ocean, so runoff is higher. These all kind of things which we study, which we talk about when environmental sciences, their hydrological cycles. So what now emphasis is being given is how do you conserve water?
Yes.
Rainwater harvesting and water harvesting. There are two
things.
broad, distinct steps. One is everything which is getting precipitated. It shouldn't get as a runoff and get down onto rivers and oceans. We need to conserve that rainwater. Another is the water which is already being used. That how do you reuse that? How do you
Increase the
harvest it? So we have green building codes. We have Griha kind of codes which talks about how do you store rainwater and how do you reuse the water which is already being used. So there are many steps, and now most of the buildings you see Delhi, it is a residential hub. It is sprawling like anything. Now most of the newer buildings which are coming, including government buildings, they are ensuring that they follow the codes of green building, and in that one of our strongest component is on rainwater harvesting and another is on water harvesting. So that has actually come in practice. These kind of steps are there. In addition to this, existing residential areas and existing settlements, those are also being encouraged to make tanks to conserve rainwater or to reutilize it for gardening, car washing and all those kind of things. So somewhere we are trying to ensure the water cycle which got disrupted because of climate change, and wherein a fair chunk was getting into oceans, we restrict it here and we cycle it, reutilize it, so that our footprint relatively goes small and we become much more efficient, or we altogether change our lifestyle while dealing with
Ultimate aim is changing the lifestyle.
Yes.
And in that way we'll be saving our energy and water.
Yes.
And with regard to the waste, because the population, if you look at it, we are the most populous country in the world. So that same length, if you look at it, the waste generation was also higher. So what are the steps that we can take to minimize the waste generation, and what steps that can be taken that from waste to energy we can, a lot of technologies are coming up. So what are the steps that we can take on this waste management, sir?
Well, when you look at solid waste management, what one was one of the biggest blunder was that we were just thinking as if solid waste could be dumped and landfilling sites were being identified. People never thought that it is a limited resource altogether. And even if you raise the height of dumps, it is something very uncertain, and there could be they can trigger some kind of hazards.
Definitely.
So one of our very important steps in solid waste management is segregating it at the source. So that has become something very important. Now, if you look at the way dustbins are being kept, you are talking about green, blue. Even after COVID, you get yellow, red, all those kind of things. But talking about the domestic waste which is coming or the industrial waste which is coming, there are policies which are ensuring that you first segregate this, use the biological waste for other kind of purposes, and also generate some energy out of that. Bioethanol and those kind of things are being taught. When it comes to industrial waste or other set of waste, there is a vehicle scrap policy which has come into picture, wherein and again the Prime Minister of the country, he initiated this so that it could be reutilized. The kind of things which are over there, and specifically the metal which is over there, that could be reutilized for the indigenous equipment development or other kind of things. Then when these things of these kind of steps are being followed, Ministry of Environment and Forest is also enhancing projects which are dealing with electronic waste,
yeah.
which are dealing with other kind of chemical waste, which could be hazardous in nature, and they are sanctioning many of the what we call it startups, or many of the industrial services which can take such type of mini projects, and they can segregate it from there, and then ultimately identify how to economically some kind of elements could be extracted from the e-waste.
That's because
So
lot of earth metals is also there in that particular e-waste.
so if you look at e-waste, it is very rich, but it is in a form, it is logged in a form that we don't understand it. So Ministry of Environment and Forest has ensured that they encourage people to reutilize, segregate this, and bring out different components from there. So these are some of the very strong strategies which are there. And if you look at some of the belts of Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, wherein these setups are coming up, people have started investing in using waste, converting it into energy or some kind of economical benefits. So those all transitions are taking place.
Yeah. So, sir, when you look at our country, it is almost 146 crores. And the big task is that to achieve food security at a national level, at the household level also. So, and perhaps this is also important theme of Mission Life. So, when you look at the sustainable agriculture food system, so what are the steps that can be taken to achieve food security and nutrition security?
This is indeed a very challenging part, and when we compare it with West, what we get to see is their investment even in food consumption is very high, for the reason they use more of a processed food. So we are very different, unlike West. We have our culture was always there, wherein we were more into producing your own food, cooking by yourself, and then eating with your hands. So if you try dissecting all these things, they all ensure that you conserve energy, you conserve water utilization into this, right from growing it to processing it and also consuming it. Then the way fertilizers were being used, so manure was always part of that. Organic farming is being talked about, natural farming is being talked about, but people are still debating on that, if it will always be able to meet our food security. So those kind of some hitches are there. We need to understand them in much more higher degree of clarity, but still when we are talking about agriculture systems and all, so there are some at the policy level, some of the interventions are wherein you first understand the soil quality, soil health card is being talked about, insurance is being talked about, and usage of urea, the way it was being used earlier, that has
judicious
been
use.
Being discouraged, so that judicious usage could be there. So these all are enabling environments which are talking about sustainability in the larger perspective. You meet your hunger requirement, that is one of the goals, but at the same time you ensure your terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystems are not getting affected by that. So these kind of newer paradigms are being talked about, and those are taking care of it.
In fact, whatever the technology you cited now is that it will be helping to achieve the food security. At the same time, it will adapt to towards the climate change also, because the adaptation is also equally important. That's the point, because when you use the fertilizer, if you rightly use the right quantity, so nitrous oxide emission can be minimized. And if you're in a position to manage the use of water properly, the methane emission that can be minimized.
Yes.
So because agriculture as a sector also contributes to climate change.
Definitely.
So in that way, when you talk about sustainable agriculture food system, it is all along that one is to minimize the greenhouse gas emissions, and the other is to adapt and to achieve the food security.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because, and when you look at all the themes of Mission Life, one is water, energy, waste, electronic waste, and sustainable food system. So the underlying theme is that changing the lifestyle, healthy lifestyle. So when you have a healthy lifestyle, definitely we'll be in a position to utilize the resources properly. So ultimate is sustainable consumption of whatever resources we are having it, so that the future generation will be getting all the benefits possible. So when you talk about the healthy lifestyle, in your opinion, what all those healthy lifestyles, what one has to adopt, those healthy lifestyles, so that our environment can be protected?
Well, as an individual, if I talk about this, you start from the early morning in the day. The kind of activities which in our routine activities which we are involved in. So there are many aspects wherein water could be conserved.
Yes.
There are many aspects where energy could be conserved. So looking at that. Second comes, like when it comes to food items and all. So I will definitely say that, we should be less relying on processed food because it is very energy intensive. So we need to look into, maintaining kitchen gardens, maintaining terrace gardens. Can we produce our own food, at least the basic necessities? And there are very set examples where people are doing it successfully. I'm just not talking about rural areas. I'm talking about typical urban areas wherein people have started doing farming on their terrace, and they are able to produce some of the items which otherwise they were purchasing from market. Then looking into the food items which are providing energy per se, like millets. We have come back to millets, and one of the very basic reason is the kind of energy inputs which were coming from there. And when you compare it with other set of food items, and now people are talking about, there was International Year for Millets which was being celebrated, and everybody was talking about that. So looking into food items. Then it comes to your clothing, the kind of things. So try using something which is very friendly to the kind of environment which is around. So if one is able to connect with these things, probably, a sustainable and healthy lifestyle could be ensured.
It's good, sir. Dear viewers, today we discussed the philosophy of mission life, and we have discussed the 7 themes, particularly how we can save water, energy, manage the waste, and how to adopt a healthy lifestyle so that we will be achieving food security and nutritional security. And at the same time, the main important aspect of mission life is that to bring in change in the lifestyle of the human beings, and that will be possible by changing the demand, changing the supply, and a policy on mission life. That is essentially important. And thank you very much, Professor P.K. Joshi, for coming to our studio and discussing all aspects of mission life. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.